June 25th to order. Let the record reflect the starting time of 3:30. All committee members are present with the exception of Chair Councilman Garza. He is under the weather and has asked for an excused absence. So in his absence, I will be chairing the meeting. And with that being said, that takes us to the meeting minutes from June 11th, 2025. We need a motion.
So moved.
The motion on the floor, again, this is for the meeting minutes of June 11th, 2025. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. It takes us to, if you have an agenda, folks, in your hands, it takes us to agenda item number 4. This is public comment on agenda items for up to 3 minutes. If there are folks from the public that just want to speak generally to any of these issues prior to us actually bringing related parties up at the table, this is your time. You have up to 3 minutes. If there are things that you want to address before this committee that are not part of this agenda, I already had a conversation with one attendee. We can take that up under other. So with that, are there any public comments? Seeing none. We are on discussion action item 5B. This is a resolution of appointment for Cambriana Crank as a resident member of the Lansing Gateway Corridor Improvement Authority Board of Directors for a term to expire June 30th, 2027. We have not heard from this particular applicant over the last few days in terms of whether or not she can attend. It does not look like she is present. So what we are going to do is pull this appointment for today, since it's not a reappointment, and then we'll place it on the July 9th Development and Planning Committee meeting. And our office manager, Sherry Book, will reach out and try to gain some measure of assurance that she'll be here. Takes us to agenda item 5C. So if our folks from the LEDC want to come up, Mr. Brent Forsberg, this is to set a public hearing for Brownfield Plan number 80, originally passed back in March of 2022. This is its first amendment. And this is for development at Pleasant Grove Homes, which will be a mixed-use redevelopment project, subject property. This is 2130 West Homes. So as always, with the Brownfield plans, we're going to turn the floor first over to the LEC. We'll then hear from the developer, and then we'll open it up for committee questions and councils. Mr. Dorsey, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You have copies of a presentation, the color copies for the committee. One for the record.
Oh, yeah, but I could put one in his box, Jeremy box.
So, all right, so afternoon, Carl Dorschmer, Lansing EDC. We are here today to ask, to give a presentation and ask that a public hearing be set for July 28th regarding a proposed amendment to Brownfield Plan number 80, which is on property located at 2130 West Holmes Road. It's the northeast corner of Pleasant Grove and Holmes.
Can I stop you for a second?
Oh,
We're looking to establish
Yes.
a public hearing.
Yeah.
July 28th.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it'd be July.
Yeah. because we're going on the 14th.
Yeah, the 23rd. Okay, sorry, we just had,
That's
my bad in terms of,
We need the timeline. Yeah, so we
Yeah.
need the timeline to match so that the
Yep.
notice can go out.
that
Okay.
works. Okay, thank
I'm
you.
just looking at the wrong here. If it's not in your,
It's in there.
Back to it.
Yep, it's in the packet. The timeline's in the packet.
All right, Carl, I'm so sorry, man. Go ahead.
Sorry. My bad.
I was just,
Stay quiet.
the timeline's there. I was just calculating in my head the required public notice time period.
Right, got it. Okay.
Okay, so little history of the site. It's been a school for many, many years. Then it was vacant for quite some time. Approximately 10 years ago, the Ingham County Land Bank took possession of the property with the intent to find a developer to work with to redevelop the site. And at the time, there was several different proposals, and Ferguson Development proposed purchasing the property and redeveloping it. They put together a great project. And they came to us, the Brownfield Authority, asked, how can you help us? Can we do a Brownfield plan here? So we worked with them, put together a Brownfield plan, brought it through our board, brought it to the council and this committee. And so Brownfield plan number 80 was approved. And that was only a couple of years ago. And so plan was approved. It was also approved by MEDC. However, it was a difficult time to do a project. Developer was unable to secure tenants and some additional financing and several other reasons. And as a result, was unable to proceed with the project. It's stalled. didn't own the property. They just had an option to purchase the property. And that option was extended multiple times to try and give them more time. Put the project together. Ultimately, they were unable to do that. So the land bank allowed it to expire. And so set them back. So then it was, well, how do we find another developer to help develop this property? In the meantime, the land bank was able to obtain some funds and demolish the old school building that was on site to clear the site, make it more appealing for development, and also reduce the cost to any potential future developer looking to develop that site. And I say this is a key intersection in the Southwest Lansing area where, we've been working a lot. Adam, you're very familiar with it. And so as a result of it, there was another effort to find a developer, and Brent Forsberg, who's here, who you know, he with his team and working with the land bank, and then we also working with EDC Brownfield Authority, and then we have Connor Zook, who's with Tritera. You're familiar with Dave Van Haren, who works for Tritera, and Connor is learning from Dave and becoming the next brownfield expert for them. So anyway, so then with that, Brent had this proposal. He's been working with the team, with us, and ultimately with the land bank too, and has come to the point where he has a new proposal, a new development proposed for the site. And he asked, and his team asked us, the Brownfield Authority, it's like, we already have a brownfield plan on site. Can we just amend the plan to help us do this project? And so that's what the amendment, the proposed amendment is for. That amendment went before our board, the Brownfield Authority, on June 20th and was approved. So now it was forwarded on, it was received and referred by committee. And here we are at the committee meeting, looking to set a public hearing. So what I wanted to do is we'll tag team it on the presentation I handed out. Any questions on history of the site or anything like that?
Councilman Cost? Nope. Go ahead.
Okay, so if you turn to like page 2, so table of contents, first I'll give a little overview of the Brownfield program has been expanded, amended multiple times, and lately it's been amended to encourage affordable and attainable housing and use that financing mechanism to encourage developers to produce those kind of units that are affordable. And also introduction to the development team, and then Brent and the development team will give a little project overview, and then I'll kind of outline the Brownfield plan and how it's changed and what it looks like now. And then also a fiscal impact on the city and other taxing units.
All right.
So without further ado, so the next page should have many numbers, but housing tip overview talks a little bit about how it was amended. This is a very useful tool now. One of the biggest problems in the city, obviously, is affordable housing. So now we can use the very powerful tool of tax increment financing to help encourage developers to build more of that housing and make it more available. So there was an amendment to the act. And then it adds an extra layer to it. So MISTA has to also approve the plan. But anyway, it's something that was amended. We've been working with developers to figure out how best to use the amendments. We're doing it really cautiously. And it's something that we're learning in progress, but it's definitely a good tool. So one of the things that are listed in here is the income requirements in terms of to qualify for these particular units. So added that. And then when it says AMI, that's average median income, I believe. And so that's a common measurement used to see if somebody qualifies for affordable or attainable or even workforce housing. So that's an overview of TIF. It's very similar to the normal brownfield. It's just that it adds these additional costs that support and allow a developer to offer a unit at a lower rental rate that they normally would not have done because they couldn't make money on it. But now as a result of the TIF being thrown into the mix, they can do it and basically make money. So they're going to go ahead and do it. So it's an incentive to encourage potable development. Then next, so the development team I've introduced to you. And Brett, you want to just kick it off? Tell us a little bit about the project, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry,
no,
I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this the AMI off the county
Oh,
or is it off the city?
county-based. This is county-based, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. No.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
So through Mishta, it's county-based.
All right.
So a little bit about the development team, about the project itself. So this is a model of development that has been used in other areas. I'm excited to help facilitate this in the city of Lansing. We're using what's known as a community capital model, where the goal of this project is to be owned by the people that live in the community. And we're setting it up as a offering that's going to be available through a crowdfunding platform that's going to allow for people to invest in it. It's going to be run by an investment board of the investors, not by the developer. So I'm facilitating in it. I will have a small piece of the project, but I will not be the majority owner of the project in any way, shape, or form. The idea behind this is looking at areas like Southwest Lansing that haven't seen investment for 30 plus years of anything major. How do we respur development, which is why this brownfield is essential for this project? And putting the team together that this is how I feel development needs to be addressed moving forward across many communities. That keeping the control local for the assets and keeping it in the community so it reflects the values and culture of the community. So that's the core philosophy behind what we're doing. Our team that we put together, I'm really excited about. For the next one, we're going to make sure we have all of the logos on here. I apologize, Triterra. They've been an essential piece of this, and then the land bank as well. And this has been a partnership from the beginning of putting this together. You know, this project, the first phase that we're doing, it's a building that's going to be plus or minus 7,000 square feet of commercial on the first floor. And LabQ is committed to be one of our first tenants. They're also bringing their foundation in to bring in programming around financial health in communities. And they're looking at this as really a long-term investment in the community for helping build that banking ecosystem in an area that hasn't had banking for quite some time. And we're also looking at bringing in an area for small restaurants that will also have some gathering space. So instead of doing individual restaurants, we're looking at doing a counter style that will allow for the extra space to be available for community gatherings as well, because that's how we begin to build that relationship with the restaurants, that groups can come in, use the space, utilize the restaurants that are there. And then we've also put in a large plaza that's going to be outside of this that is going to allow for activation of that corner. So it comes out to right to the corner of Holmes and Pleasant Grove, and then has a plaza behind that will also be used. We're going to make sure it's got electricity and things so it can be used for events. And then we're working with the Malcolm X Committee to do a memorial since he went to school here. And then also working with Southwest Action Group, Southside Coalition to make sure that we're reflecting the values of the community in there as well. So the reason for the brownfield with this first phase, we're doing all of the infrastructure for stormwater of the entire project, of what it could be. We don't know what the other phases are going to look like yet, but we have room for another mixed use building and potentially some residential. So the goal is to keep building up around this. And then also working with a property owner across the street to potentially repave a parking lot and use some of that for overflow. And the reason for that is you have to make this per the, well, it's in the master plan that way, but also with the community engagement we have, the neighborhood center. This area was developed in the 1950s. So it was car centric. You have strip malls and everything that were designed for cars to get in and out, not about making a place where people can gather comfortably and feel that connection with the community. And the Southwest Action Group and Southside Coalition has done a lot of work with the town square, with the upgrades of Beacon Park, with the group Invest Health to work on health of the single family home housing there. So this is kind of that next step. And Southwest Action Group and the Invest Health group have been a major collaborator on this to make sure that we're getting it right and fulfilling what the community expects to see there. And the goal of this is over time that in the next 20 years, this really can be developed into the neighborhood center for Southwest Lansing. So this is the neighborhood scale development. This first building pushes the building closer to Holmes Road. So it's going to start with that engagement. We've got balconies facing the street, so we have good engagement from the apartments up above. We've got good engagement with commercial on the first floor to really begin to retrofit into an area that didn't have that. And it'll be a good model for other areas in Southwest Lansing and quite frankly, the rest of the city that grew outside of the initial core post-World War II of how do we start to reset these neighborhood patterns to build these connections? And Southwest or Invest Health, one of the ideas that came out of it was what grows here stays here. And this is what we need to do with our communities. We need to, our children, our small businesses, our resources that we invest in need to stay in control of the people that are utilizing them. And this is the first model that'll be in Lansing. And we're using a group called C3 Now that is a national community capital group. And Chris Miller is their chair, and he's been working with us directly on it. He's excited about it, helping us get this set up. So we're really excited on what it will be and what it's going to be for a model for how communities can grow into the second half of the 21st century. So open for any questions that you guys have on it. And we're excited, and the brownfield is an essential piece of this because a lot of the infrastructure lift is in the first phase. And as we go through and go to the other phases, our goal is to make sure that we're being a good steward of public resources going into our project and being able to achieve the values of Southwest Lansing.
Right, yeah. And I would tell you, as somebody that was involved back in 2021, going into 2022, and then obviously the approval of Brownfield Plan 8 in March 2022, there was a ton of excitement. It's probably one of the easiest plans to ever get past this council, at least during my time. And I actually, in looking at this and being somewhat involved in terms of the conversations and so kind of at the table, this is an even better. I mean, it might not have the same initial investment dollar amount, but the fact that you're using the community capital model and this is actually to me almost more exciting of a development. So, and my God, right? You just captured everything without looking at anything. I was at South Lansing Business Association today and I was talking about this brownfield plan and they were super excited. These are folks that obviously have, business interest in and around South Lansing. And some of them are residents of South Lansing, some of them are outside of South Lansing. And they all want to know, how can we get involved? How can we support? And they told me after one person after the meeting told me, he said, man, how do you remember all of that stuff? Like, I said, you never met Bram Forsberg, have you? So you amaze me every time you speak. That being said, I know we still have a few things to cover in terms of the actual development that I think you were going to cover. Can you, just for the record, can you talk about the MSHDA and how many of the units, of the 30 residential units, will be income restricted for the duration of the plan?
So per the TIF, we have to restrict 25% of the units. And one thing right now, the rates that we're looking at are pretty close to market rates for this area of Lansing
I
right
think it's
now.
actually 20%, correct?
Right, 20%?
Yeah.
We'll have to look at that with the county one because I got a note on it and I thought it said, I'll look at that, 20 to 25%.
Okay.
And right now, that's not going to affect the rent rates.
Okay.
But what it will do as we continue to see pressure and inflation, it's going to hold those units during that 20-year time period.
Excellent.
And the rates that we're looking at will be right around just over 1,000 to about 1,600 is what we're looking at, that when this is open in a little over a year will be the opening rates. And it's a mixture of 1 and 2 bedrooms.
Which is about the market in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but understand that, yes, coming out that we are basically at market rate, but what it's going to allow is over time that those units will stay
Right.
in the program.
And again, for the record, just so folks know, you talked a lot about the commercial component. But in terms of the residential, you're looking at 30 units, 30 doors.
30 units in the first,
It'd be 15 one bedroom, 15 two, right?
approximately.
Approximately,
Yeah.
roughly. Okay, perfect. And then outside of that, let me see if there were any other things that I wanted to make sure that we talked about in terms of the actual development. Investment contemplates, or I should say this plan contemplates a $9.6 million investment.
So that was an outside number.
Okay.
When we were looking at this.
Yeah.
We're tracking right now And we're still not done. We're going to have those full numbers in
Okay.
July.
Okay,
But right now, we're looking at, for the initial first phase is about 8.2.
okay,
And then what we did with the UDA is we made the commitment to the hard costs of the building as we know them right now. So we make sure. And the reason why this plan is in flux is because we didn't know which tenants that we were having. We're also, because we're not sure on building two. The one piece we're not building the infrastructure is all of the sidewalks and everything up against the, where building two's pad will be. That might just be left asphalt, so we don't have to rip out a bunch of concrete if the building footprint changes.
okay. Carl, can you talk to us a little bit about the financial impact in terms of the tax capture?
So brownfield request is for a 30-year plan, and that's the maximum length. We typically, don't like to go that long, but in this case, we recommend going that long because it's a difficult site, difficult area, a challenging development to do. And so,
Well, that's now, I mean, the initial plan without amendment, that was a 30-year plan too, correct?
yeah,
Yes,
so
I
it will be actually less than that because, well, capture never started, right? So,
Yeah, capture.
so this is 30 years of capture.
Yeah, yeah.
You can start capture up to 5 years after a plan's approved. So it will be 30 years worth of capture unless all the, quite often these are very conservative estimates in terms of what's the TIF capture. The taxes typically are kind of underestimated and the costs are typically overestimated just from a conservative standpoint. But in reality, what happens is it's successful. You got more revenue coming in, less cost to reimburse, and the plan won't go 30 years.
Right.
Also, I don't think I've ever seen a plan go 30 years that wasn't amended because, he'll probably come back or whoever the owner is and say, I want to redo, I want to expand this development. I want to do phase two. I want to do something else.
Sure.
So the plan can be amended to accommodate that. So that's the beauty of a brownfield plan is you can amend it.
Right.
According to circumstance.
Absolutely. Okay.
So, and then over that 30-year period, about $5.5 million of new taxes will be generated. So just the new taxes are being captured, not the existing base tax. And eligible activities to be first paid by the developer and then reimbursed by the brownfield authorities about 3.8. So on the net new taxes are projected to be about 1.7. So that's just the quick numbers as far as the commitments, which is touched on the next page. So 20% of the units for 30 years have to be between 80 and 120% of the AMI. So if it's a 6 years, phase and that's additional units. Then the UDA, all development projects that ask for incentives like a brownfield and tax incentives, they have to enter into the Universal Development Agreement, make commitments, and just to highlight of there's commitment to local labor, to making effort for local labor and hiring local businesses to help, like subs and things like that. Just all the normal requirements, but the highlights is he's committing to investing the 6.5 million, which may be even more depending on what happens. And then committing to start construction, assuming everything is approved and things fall in line in November. And then end construction in November 25, and then end construction in April 2027. So those are the UDA highlights. And typically with the UDA, we do audits and there's annual reporting requirements. And if they fall short, then typically they're notified and they're given a period to cure. Essentially, it's like a notice of default, and council has the ability to either halt reimbursement and or terminate the incentive if they don't live up to performance. Rarely does it get that point because just the mere threat that that's going to happen typically spurs action and discussion, and there's some type of a compromise that's reached. Quite often it's something very unusual, like a pandemic or something that gets in the way. And as a result, people say, well, it's better to go ahead and keep this moving because this is good for the city, good for the neighborhood. So So rarely, it's very hard. We've done 85. A few of them. If anything, they never start. Once they start and they come out of the ground and get completed, it's usually pretty successful. So and one last thing, there's a table here on the actual numbers to show you the taxes that are captured. And this is something that's in the brownfield plan too. But it just shows you, of that 5.5, where it's going. And there's a 10% pass through that we do, so that, all of the taxing, the school and the state education, they get 10%. And then there's 10% to the local units. So that's something that we've done standard in all of our plans, so that the taxing units don't have to wait. Like in this case, it would be quite a few years, 25, 30 years, but instead, right off the bat, they are at least getting some increase in tax revenue.
Before I forget, there's a timeline proposed by actually the LEC that's in our packet, or actually in the plan. With regard to the July 14th meeting, we are going to watch it there to present. So that's when we actually establish the public hearing for the 28th. And if we can get, if there's any tweaks or whatever, if we can get the final presentation to our office staff by July 10th, so we can actually utilize that for City TV and the packets, both online and in person. Connor with Triterra, do you have anything to add? David, do you have anything from Land Bank's perspective?
We're excited about this project though, as well. So.
Yeah, and it's the partnership, I think, to get to this point has been incredible, maybe almost unprecedented. So I really appreciate the work.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Brett, anything else?
I mean, it's going to take the community to get this built between now and fall. This is a community-based project.
Right.
And it's going to be everybody wanting to make sure that this gets off the ground. And we've gotten this far because of the community support only. And the land bank being able to help us get the pre-development dollars.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. And when this is done, this is something that will be a game changer, especially in Michigan,
Right.
for how communities can do the projects. And when we look at us versus the coast, right, you have these large investment groups around the country, and we're considered what's called a flyover state, where we don't have that big equity investment coming into our communities because we don't have that scale and size. So this is a model that, going back even to the early 20th centuries, how communities built, right? The businesses, the people built the buildings, built the places through investing in them. And we're just going back to that model that changed post-World War II. So I'm really excited about it. That yes, this is a new version of it, but it really is based on the values that built Michigan 100 years ago. So
Right.
I'm excited to see it move.
Yeah, and everybody that knows about the project is, I think, equally excited. And I think your job come July 14th is make sure the entire city is excited about it, right? And then we'll start to rally the community and make sure this thing happens. This is a game changer, in my opinion. Okay, Councilman Cost, do we have any questions?
Just a couple things. Hopefully the folks in the first ward will plug their ears right now, but I am incredibly excited for the third ward to be getting this kind of, as you know, I spend a ton of time riding my bike through there.
Yes, you do.
And that is, it's itching for someone to do something like this. And it is just exciting to see this moving forward after a hell of a week that we've all had with liquor stores and the addition of another one in that corridor. To see some positive use stuff happen in that area is very exciting, especially the LAFQ part. There are so surprisingly a lot of areas with no financial institutions, and that is fantastic to be able to have that and actually help people with their finances in there. Not only that piece, but I think there is a medical piece in there too. Just fantastic. And the rendering, which I know is not probably final, but to have balconies overlooking a really beautiful area, because it is a beautiful area, overlooking that Beacon Field that's across the street. I think that this is going to be a huge opportunity for those corners. I'm very excited about this brownfield. I've been excited about a lot of the development, but it's really great to see some of the development, not downtown and not in the
Right.
first ward.
Right.
Though we do love our development in the first ward. It is good to see it in other parts of the city.
Completely agree. Is there any public comment with regard to this outside of the folks at the table? Seeing none. So what we need is a motion for the resolution that would establish a public hearing for July 28th.
So moved.
All right, there's a motion on the floor for the discussion. before we take our final vote, man, thank you, Brett.
Thank you, guys.
I think the entire community, man, like, even when I told the SLBA about this, I actually told them about everything happening downtown, historic core, South Lansing, South MLK corridor. And most of the folks I wanted to talk about, the things after the meeting was this project. How did this start? How did it grow legs? How can we, how can maybe recreate this? Should this be successful? How can we create it, throughout the community? So we're excited, man. This is pioneer type stuff. We appreciate you. With that being said, there's a motion on the floor for, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, so the plan then will be to have this out in front of council to actually set the public hearing for the 20th. That will be on the 14th. Great. We just need you at that meeting.
I'll be there.
And we'll put that as a special presentation, beginning of the meeting, so it should be closer to 7. We'll just pull you and, if Connor wants to be here, and David, and we'll pull you guys down as well with Mr. Carl Bush. Or, no, it might not be. Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, it might be like.
Okay, I hope so, because your hands are all over this thing too, so.
Yeah.
So we'll bring Chris down.
Yeah.
How long do we have for the special presentation?
As long as you want,
You ask the president.
Thank you.
as long as you want.
It's on the record.
I'd like to cover a little bit more on the community side of
Yes.
what this is.
Absolutely. You're welcome to at this happy place.
Great.
Awesome. Appreciate you.
Yeah,
All right. See you soon.
thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. That takes us to, yep, absolutely. Takes us to discussion action item 5D. Yeah, sorry. This is a resolution to introduce and set a public hearing to amend chapters 206, section 206.02, specifically to clarify the most responsive and responsible bidder for construction bids. I know Jeremy really wanted to be here to discuss this because he has worked on this. Unfortunately, he is sick and unable to be here, but we do have Stephanie Robinson for purchasing. So I didn't know if you were here to kind of just talk about the changes or talk about your role in supporting this, or I don't, because I didn't establish the meeting, right? So I don't know.
Understand the whole situation and find out what,
Okay, so you're on that end of
Yep.
it. So here's what I'm going to actually do then. I'm going to turn this over to legal. And if you could very quickly just talk to us, because obviously we have this, and then we also have the subsequent or kind of this companion piece
Yeah.
of this, criteria, this scoring system. But if you could talk to us just a little bit about the changes in terms of the actual ordinance, we'd appreciate that.
Sure. So if you don't know, my name is Dan Duchesne. I'm a deputy city attorney. Before I get started, I do want to say there is a holdover change. There's a change that is from a holdover draft that needs to be made.
Okay.
Change to page, if you turn to page 6, lines 1, 2, and 3
Mhm.
should be removed. And then,
Which lines? I'm sorry.
sorry,
1, 2, 3.
Starting with evidence, the bidder.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
And then on line 4, that would need to be renumbered or relettered to Roman numeral 3. That's just a holdover from a previous draft.
Okay. So we're actually cutting 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? And
No, you're just on 4, you're renumbering, and we'll send a revised draft of it, but 4 would just be, Roman numeral 4 would be changed to Roman numeral 3.
Oh, wait.
Line 4.
maybe I'm crossing up.
Roman numeral. There is no,
So I see Roman
Yeah,
numeral
there's-
3 for number 1.
Yep.
And then I see 2 starts with paid leave, 3 starts with Roman numeral 4. So what you're saying,
On page 6,
yes,
I might be looking at it.
I'm at
You
committee
might-
draft, I'm on committee draft 1. What are we supposed to be on?
well, it's the one
It might
dated
have put in
June,
different-
June 18th.
Can I get a copy of the packet?
Yes.
Right there.
Yeah.
It's the one dated June 18th at the top. I don't think you have the right one.
I might not. This might not be.
No, this is the one we got last week, June 18th.
One moment. It's just a formatting issue on the printout for my copy to yours. So it would be your lines on here.
Are we just cutting out Roman numeral 3?
Yes, yeah, and so my apologies.
Nope, that's fine.
Yep, so it'll be lines 1 and 2, and on line 3, Roman numeral 4 will be renumbered to Roman numeral 3.
That's perfect.
It's just based on that.
Nope, that makes sense. All right.
My apologies.
Just wasn't able to follow you.
Yep, and thank you for clarifying.
Yep, okay.
So with that out of the way, My understanding is that Councilmember Garzo was working with our office to get this before the council. This is adding a sub I to section 206.02 A sub 1. And it is in order to provide clarification and definition to what is a most responsive and responsible bidder when it comes to construction contracts. So there's a list of criteria that would be used to evaluate and score construction bids that are over $75,000 by staff. And the bidder that should be selected when those proposals are going out for requests.
Right. And this pertains to construction work, correct? Yeah, only construction work. And then the other piece is, right. And the ordinance applies to, and I'm talking about in its entirety, anything over 15,000. Do we know how they settle on 75,000?
That's a policy decision to my knowledge. and
Okay.
That's what came out of the request to our office.
Yeah, and when we get this in front of council and actually establish a public hearing, we'll let Jeremy talk about it.
That would be,
Talk about some of those things, since he was intimately involved. Okay. I have had an opportunity to go through this, certainly understand the spirit of this.
Yep.
Are there, with regard to this piece, do you have any?
I don't have any questions on it.
Okay. Stephanie?
I'm all in favor of having criteria
Yep.
for finding.
I think as somebody so as a teacher, right, the problem I always had, and I didn't bring this forward, the problem I always had with this ordinance is that it seemed arbitrary, right? That there was going to be this arbitrary application of. And so the fact that we are now kind of defining what responsible is with regard to construction work and then adding some science behind the rubric, that's right up my alley. So I think it does actually make it a little bit simpler to determine what that responsible looks like. I think the question that becomes, is this what's going to be palatable to council, right? These things embedded in here, and eventually this added piece of the resolution that actually creates the construction bid scoring system. And then obviously there have to be internal policies in terms of how you guys actually can apply. But I get the spirit of this, the function of this. So I think we're probably ready to get this out in front of council for consideration to set a public hearing. There is a mistake in the resolution that's in the packet. Says that the public hearing will be June 9th. My understanding is the public hearing would actually be established for July 28th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So Councilman Goss.
Yep, I would move the resolution with the amended changes to the date to July 28th.
Okay. Which means this would be out in front of council for the 14th. That's when we'd have the presentation we'd establish for the 28th. All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. And then to the item E, this is a resolution that actually deals with construction bid scoring system. Let's see. This is a 100-point rubric, scores monetary items. Again, this is to be used by the mayor and the purchasing director when awarding bids for construction on projects of over $75,000. The only thing.
So it's monetary and non-monetary.
I'm sorry, what did I say? Just non-monetary, monetary and non-monetary.
Broken out as far as non-monetary, but the monetary speaks for itself.
Perfect. Is there anything anybody wanted to add?
I will,
Yeah,
this one is much less substantial.
Okay.
There's an asterisk on before the word documentation. But
Yes.
also a holdover from a previous draft that will need to be removed. We'll make sure we get that in. First, again, it might not be on your version.
Are you talking about for number one?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's going to be removed, and then are we?
Just the asterisk, just that.
Just the asterisk.
Yep.
But so here's what I don't understand. It's because you have this, right? And then when I was first looking at this, I thought, there's still a problem here, right? In terms of how I create my own rubrics. But then I flipped it and I went here, and you guys actually did what I was hoping to do, right? And so you guys actually break down the 16. You have the Roman numeral I is 8 points. You have Roman numeral 2 is 2 points. Roman numeral 3 is 2 points. So I don't know why these are both things. So you have the 100-point scoring rubric here, but then here it breaks it down further in terms of how you're actually going to divide that 16 points out and apply. So
So I guess if you look at the 60, so on the second page, 60 plus 40 is 100.
Yep.
Okay, 40 is the monetary, is the cost. That is 40 points based on the amount of the bid. Then you have 60, which is the.
No. Here's what I'm saying.
No,
Here's what I'm saying.
we're getting, we have the same thing on both pages.
Yeah,
It's in there twice.
Yeah.
The scoring rubric.
But the second rubric, that is the same thing as that.
It's
So go flip it. Like, look at the first box. Instead of the asterisk saying that
Top right.
Roman numeral I gets half the points, that one actually breaks it down into 8 points. And then whatever it is, more. You see what I'm
I
saying?
don't have this. Okay.
Okay.
So you should be using,
Because I would assume we're supposed to be using the more developed
the
one.
second one. So these two pages here.
All right, so we're using this. Yep.
Second set?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll look into that one as well. So
Yeah, but it's still got to be fixed though, because even here we have 8 points, 2 points, and 2 points. That only adds up to 12 points. So,
there's a reason for that.
oh,
Okay, so these subcategories here.
Yep.
That is a non-exhaustive list of what would be included in one. So one is made up of Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, and Roman numeral 3. But there might be other, that's a non-exhaustive list of what might be included within that category.
got it.
And so if you were to put all the points available to each one of those subcategories, and something were to come up that is not included in the non-exhaustive list, you are now out of opportunities to allocate a score for that.
Came up with that. Okay.
But so, wait, I have a question.
Go- it's probably the same
It's
question I had.
incredibly confusing. So,
Yeah.
because I mean, we're laying it out within this resolution. And I guess, so like for Roman numeral 1,
Yes.
maybe that's not worth 8 points then, is what you're saying?
No, it would be worth 8. So if you add 8 to.
These are permanent numbers to
Yeah.
these affixed things.
Correct.
And then there's just additional 4 points.
Boy,
But
that,
that should be enumerated, I feel.
I would feel like
Other.
extra
Keep it
credit.
other, I suppose, if that
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah.
I mean, because is it like extra credit? I know this guy, he's my neighbor.
It's not extra credit. It would be, so for instance, that would not be obviously one of the criteria, but there are things within one that can't be put within the enumerated list. So
And
that
here's
if
the.
you wanted to do other, you could do that. I
Yeah,
suppose.
and with this resolution, this does not have to have a public hearing.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't an ordinance change. So what we can do is continue to work on this.
That's what I was just gonna
And-
say, because you're not gonna want to
And Stephanie,
adopt
we'd
it
love-
until the ordinance is
We'd love
passed.
if you could come and be part of that committee work with Jeremy chairing, because this is his baby.
Yeah,
And
a lot of these,
he's, I think, gonna provide a lot of clarity.
Where it's getting it.
Yes,
Because it's really confusing.
Right.
And it's going to be very difficult to
Right.
put into effect when you're working on that, because every single project that we do is different. And
Right.
every construction project that we do is totally different. And I don't think, in my opinion, my experience of what we've been doing, and I think Jeremiah can say also, it's going to be very difficult to hard number these with our construction projects.
right, okay. Do you have similar,
Scoring thing, but
so you have concerns?
having it hard points
Okay.
is difficult.
well, and I see 14 points on here that aren't accounted for.
Right.
So I think that there's room for improvement.
Yeah, so I think, I guess what I'm saying is, and I know Jeremy will be amenable to that.
Yeah.
You guys, I think, part of the conversation. Do you have similar concerns with the ordinance change itself? Or is it more of the scoring?
Points.
No, the actual ordinance change that
The
actually,
first part of this part.
not the
first
resolution, the first part, just,
part. This part that we're on right now, I have a little problem.
okay.
We do use point systems, like with our RFPs for our design and construction.
Right.
And
Okay.
And I think, because every one we do is a little different, and each one's unique, we might want to have more points on this, is that, but having these hard points. for those
What I'm thinking we can do too, is, and this isn't a violation of OMA because we'll have just one individual, but what I'm thinking is we'll make sure that Jeremy connects with you, and maybe legal, and maybe work some of this out before we get to committee so that we can actually have a productive process.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
because Once it's put into play and it makes it hard,
Right.
something that we're gonna have to, public service engineering and the other groups that go along with them that actually do the construction and put the bids together, it's gonna be, we're gonna have to implement it.
Right.
That's
It's gonna be hard. Okay. That's fair.
It's a learning curve for everyone. But if we can look at other agencies and what they do, because I did reach out to some of my cohorts in purchasing to find out if other agencies are doing, they're doing something similar, but not.
Yeah. No, and I think, I mean, that's the type of partnership, right? When we're talking about law and council and admin and departmental directors and the like. It's one thing to put a tool in the toolbox, but it's got to be a usable tool. And so I think if we work together, I think we can get there. Jeremiah, did you have anything to add?
No, I'm right on with Stephanie.
Okay.
I think things are doable. We just need to figure out.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So we're going to hold off then, obviously on the resolution.
Yeah, and
We would have anyways.
Wouldn't do anything
Yeah,
if the
we would have
ordinance
anyways
passed
until the
anyway,
ordinance
so.
passes. But we can at least continue to work on this.
and I would say to Stephanie, I think a lot of this is modeled. I had meetings with Ann Arbor City Council members. Their planning department might give you some insight on how it works. I think.
Looked at Ann Arbor's, actually looked up their ordinances and everything that's part of that. They do not have hard points. They do have guidelines that you must have evaluations and different things to evaluate, but there's no hard points in their ordinance. I looked that up because somebody mentioned in our purchasing group, because we meet with the people, with the statewide purchasing group. And in that, they were saying Ann Arbor had it and then a couple other agencies. So I did look up Ann Arbor's ordinances and read it, and I could see where they had those requirements. And I looked at their bids to see their requirements, but there's no hard point system in it.
And I guess law, maybe, is there a hard point system because of how our charter is worded?
Yes, I believe the whole opportunity here is to provide points to the, it's more defendable if you use scoring criteria, which is what I believe the language in the charter does provide for. And the other comment I would make is that this rubric with the points is not in would not be in this ordinance either. So it is a resolution adopted by.
Yeah, it calls for a rubric that will be established by a resolution of council.
Yeah.
And so this, we can't pass a resolution creating a system for an ordinance that hasn't passed. And so that's what our office manager is talking about. So we have time to work on this. That's what we're saying. Okay.
Definitely need to look at that because, yeah, we need to add in things. The other part of it that we were looking at, yes, we need to have the information about sustainability and all of that into that as well.
Right.
And putting them all in there so that all of the information and some of the other things that I guess that's in our documents for our construction, we were missing some things and city attorney has said, you need to put these in your documents as well. All of those things need to be put in there, but.
Well, hey, with you at the table and with us working and getting this done right, maybe this will become the model for the state. It'd be fantastic.
And having the information, but the more that the information is shared with us, the better that we can do our jobs.
Right.
Sometimes these things happen and we don't know what's going on. There was a change to the ordinance that I didn't even know about, and then all of a sudden it's happening and it's like, oh, that would have been nice to know.
Right.
But then there's other changes because they're talking now about changing the limits on bids to increase that. So that's one of those things we're also looking at. And wouldn't it be?
Are you talking about the local preference?
No, I'm talking about our actual bid limits right now. It's 15,000 and up. There is looking at changing that to 31,000, I think, in some percentages each year. That's being looked at as well, I have been told.
Is that set by ordinance?
The limit?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's baked
So
into the
the
ordinance.
administration must be doing.
I wonder who's looking at it. Yeah, because we haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
It came down to me, but I do have.
I appreciate that info.
Yeah, maybe bring that up in leadership.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right.
I'm sure.
Fantastic. All right. So we'll make sure Jeremy reaches out and then make sure that you get an invitation to the
Yes.
next, the committee meeting. Okay.
We will not forget Stephanie
All right.
from purchasing.
Absolutely not.
Want me to do it, you better.
That's right. That's right. That takes us to other, and we do, I believe, have a public comment under other. Yes, go ahead. If you would state your first and last name for the record.
My name is Frederick McLaughlin. Oh, wow.
As long as you're not sick.
Not yet, but I haven't asked any questions. So as an architect, I've usually done significantly smaller projects that we're talking about here. And so I've got some basic questions just to, and this may sound naive, given all the years I've been in practice, but how is it that the city initiates projects? In other words, why is it that the city government is involved in any way other than through the building code and through the zoning ordinance and various matters like that to assure public health, safety, and welfare, which is what I have on my license.
Right.
I have to.
So there, I mean, there's really no simple answer. Sometimes we, as an example, we own property, put out RFPs.
Okay, so we have our own property.
Sometimes, so we might put out like a request for a proposal for a particular property, and we might get some for sale, and there's a whole long process
Yeah,
that goes through. Sometimes,
but for
you know,
non-city property.
well, in a lot of it being an urban core, our state partners have created kind of a state toolbox to allow us to incentivize development in the urban core, as an example, the brownfield program or the open program, or because we are at because we're at a severe.
By other government levels.
Yes, but we're at a severe disadvantage, right? When you talk about what it takes to develop, as an example, an obsolete property, a tax reverted property, something called a brown space with environmental contaminants. We're at a severe disadvantage when you're dealing with some of your adjacent, partners that have green space to develop. And so if you can't incentivize in some way, there's other things, right? It makes development incredibly expensive. And because they can't charge rents and things like that, they have to pay back their financing, just like everybody else has to pay back their financing. And so sometimes they can't even get financed for a project unless they have to set up like that in place. The list just goes on and on. And so we do have a responsibility to make sure that we're continuing to move our commercial corridors forward and as best as we possibly can. We want to work with reputable actors. We want to grow our tax base. That's all part of it. But it just depends on the site. It depends on whether it's, privately owned or publicly owned, or if it's a blighted property, or, I mean, there's different ways we get involved and different reasons we get involved.
So
And frankly, a lot of it comes to us, right? So as an example with Brett Forsberg, right? So Brett Forsberg, that's an example of a developer that was incredibly committed to an idea, wanted to be a part of a certain community. He had actually had some measure of control over another property that fell through for a number of reasons. Ended up working with the land bank on this particular property, and they came to the city and said, hey, here's what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to need to make it happen.
okay, the process I'm used to seeing on a much simpler level is someone comes to me and says, I'd like to do such and such with anything from a residence to a small business or whatever. And then what I do is I do my effort of looking into pertinent ordinances and regulations and building code, so forth. And my first contact with the city, if I don't have any questions of my own, for which I usually end up going directly to the building code desk and ask questions about, for clarity, to get a sense of what kind of latitude I have within developing the project and other regulations. That's kind of my contact with the city. The only contact beyond that, assuming I'm hired for the project, is that I produce documents, and then the documents go to the city for permits, and it goes through review. Maybe a variance is requested, whatever, that whole procedure. So I don't come to the governing body to do any of that. And I'm wondering how other.
Most of the time though, what you just spelled out. So I thought you meant the things that are coming at you before the legislative body, right?
Yeah.
Really, the only things we look at is if there's a land use consideration, maybe they need a rezone, maybe they need a special land use, that type of thing, or if there's an economic incentive involved. I mean, we as a legislative body, we don't really get involved in much, right? That's mostly done administratively. Building safety.
Or you're not in the real estate business.
Yeah, and that's under the purview of administration, those things you just laid out. But there are times when we're being asked to sell a property. There's times when we're being asked to buy a property. There's times when we're being asked again to rezone. We have to look at the characteristics of the surrounding land patterns, special land use. I mean, so those things, yes, we have to wait in. But yeah, most of it never comes to us.
So you're not out seeking to initiate projects unless,
I would absolutely be lying to you if I didn't, if I said that I am not constantly beating the drum for Southwest Lansing and trying to get good reputable developers to come in and do things that will, just like he said, right? Make sure that things that are grown in Southwest Lansing stay in Southwest Lansing and really help the people there ascend in space, right? Add to the viability, the livability. So I work very hard respectively as a council person to try to do that, but that's just advocacy, right? That's not necessarily going out there and doing something legislative, if that makes sense.
yeah, that does make sense. I mean, you're part of the community and you're advocating for the
Exactly,
community and so on. And I may actually live on the southwest side, as you may or may not know. I live across from Logan Square. So,
Got a lot of work to do over there.
yeah, there is a lot of work to be done over there. So in thinking these things through where you do need to get involved, I've got kind of a fundamental financial question. Does the city have enough money to meet its budget needs every year?
Yes. So we just passed a balanced budget, budget with about a 13% rainy day fund roughly. It's a fiscally responsible budget. We're doing much better at this point than we used to in terms of funding things such as, post-employment benefits, such as pension and retiree healthcare and those types of things for our retirees. But I would be lying to you if I said we don't need more. And so we need to, obviously continue to work with the state on state revenue sharing, continue to work with water light on return of equity. We need to continue to grow our tax base. We need to continue, the list goes on and on. So we're doing what we can with the money that we have. It is we are passing annually a balanced budget. We're able to take care of our responsibilities. But anybody that's part of government should be talking about how do we grow population? How do we continue to bring in businesses? How do we continue to ensure that property values are going up, right? Because you have associated tax growth with that. The list goes on and on. How do we continue to create jobs? So, yeah. Ryan, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Well, I think it's important to note that some of the brownfields that have come before us recently are actually putting buildings that haven't been on the tax rolls in 70 years back on the tax rolls. I'm thinking specifically Michigan Avenue. We have numerous areas where we're getting stuff back on the tax rolls. In fact, City Hall that we're sitting in, once this becomes a hotel, will be back on the tax rolls. And we're not putting our City Hall into a building that would take that off the tax rolls, but building a new one on a parking lot we own that's not in the tax roll. So it's about increasing,
And even with the brownfield program, I don't know if that was actually the line of questioning where we're going. My opinion of the brownfield program has changed dramatically, right? Since before I was on council, I think when I actually got out of council. And I didn't realize that they kind of, freeze, if you will. And the city continues to get the taxes that the city always got. Actually, all tax jurisdictions do, right? But what we're doing is we're actually taking taxes that are associated with the growth in terms of property values. And then what happened, there's still a pass through, right? We still have dollars that go to our revolving fund and we can use those for other projects. Our LBRA still gets administrative fees. So there's a ton of pass through. But what it does is it makes projects that are impossible to finance, it makes them possible to finance. And so now what's happening is, as an example, on this site, you have some eligible activities on that site that nobody would ever be able to actually finance, and then be able to pay back that financing using rent rates, right? And so they're going in and cleaning these sites up and doing work that if we were flush with cash, the city, to your earlier question, we're not flush with cash, that we would actually go in and we would actually provide the services to clean that up. Well, we don't have the money, right? So this is a way to incentivize them to do that work. They are still on the hook for every dollar of vertical construction. So all new construction, they're still on the hook for that. So this just helps to reimburse eligible activities, taking out tanks from underground, the asbestos, the lead, all of those types of things, right? And then outside of that, obviously you have duration. You can have a tax capture period of up to 30 years, but as you heard earlier, a lot of times it's not 30 years, and then it comes back on fully onto the tax rolls. But you got to also remember, unless we're talking a transformational brownfield, which can capture a whole lot of additional taxes, you also have jobs, income taxes, and you have even we've been able to study this long enough because we're on Plan 85. You have property values in the area go up, right? And so now all of a sudden you're actually capturing more taxes on all the properties in the area. So I mean, the economic impact is quite large, but I can promise you, a lot of the projects that we are doing right now, particularly, I think of West Miller, 820 West Miller, I think of the project down Michigan Avenue. I think of the project we just talked about today at Pleasant Grove Homes. Because I've been at the table, and have even heard from traditional lenders and things like that, that are being asked to come in as partners on these developments, they do not have them without these incentives. They just don't.
So how is it, I'm searching for another word, but I can't find it. So how is it the perpetrators of the brownfield condition aren't covering this? I mean, they're just flat broke, they're dead, or, I mean, what's,
So, yeah, so why aren't they responsible for cleanup?
yeah, why aren't they responsible for cleanup? Even long term.
Right.
I mean, some
Well, even if you look
most
at,
obligations
well, even if you look
have a
at
life way beyond their
The original owner.
perpetrators.
I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, right? And that's kind of a case by case, site specific thing. But even if you look at, as an example, Pleasant Grove and Homes, or you look at 820 West Miller. So we have brownfield plans in place. And the original owners and subsequent owners, I mean, they don't own it, right? And so both of those actually were tax converted properties and sat in the land bank. So who's going to be responsible? The land bank actually partnered with the state on some state demo dollars into something really unique at Pleasant Grove and Homes to actually tear that building down. Because the brownfield plan that we are looking at now would actually have contemplated the demo of that property as well as an eligible expense. So luckily, we're using different programs and partnerships. But yeah, so I can't answer that question because it pertains to the specific property.
Yeah. And the cause of the condition, that's out of the picture. I mean, like it or not. In other words, they or whatever
Sometimes
are out of
sometimes there are
reach.
orders where they have to clean those things up and, but again, it's a case by case situation.
Yeah. I've become interested in, and you may have heard of it, this Strong Towns. It's by a fellow who is a transportation engineer. There's a movement around the country, and it really says that virtually every municipality in the country is in over its head, that ultimately it's going to catch up.
Right.
And it'll come to a crash. And he said, there's no avoiding it unless you accept allowing development to happen at its own pace. There's no reason to push it. And part of the point of it is that we've got a lot of expense in existing infrastructure, especially infrastructure that is much more spread out and sprawling than original infrastructure was back when somebody mentioned the phrase 100 years ago. Well, 100 years ago, things weren't spread out. So you're getting a lot more bang for the buck even now,
Right.
with infrastructure that's serving a much more densely built area than with new infrastructure where you've got a lot more cost in the infrastructure for developments that are spread out. Even the value of those developments doesn't equal the value of several old funky looking buildings, because there's so many of those buildings, even though at the face of it, it looks like it would add up. So the guy's, he's got a point. And in any case, I'm trying to learn about it, and
So you sound interested, you sound very informed and well-versed, and so I think you're in the right place. I would highly encourage you to keep coming to these committee meetings. Because I think one of the things I love when we have the LEDC in and we have our legal representation, we have folks like Stephanie in. I mean, there's a lot of empowerment through education. Unfortunately, what people don't realize when they access their local government is that what takes place out there is really us just putting a bow tie on it, right? I mean, all the work is done in here.
yeah.
Right. And so, and that's why we're now live streaming and archiving it. So keep coming. All right.
Yeah, I will.
All right. If there's no other business before the body, return at 4:34. Thanks.
And thanks for taking it.
Of course.
Ryan, I need you to sign the new, there was an error